Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're going to be going through our Acadience data today, looking at reading and math data, or one of them, if that's what you have time for. But we are grateful that you are here today, and hopefully that you will walk away with some value in looking at that Acadience data. My name is Teresa McIntyre. I'm the Elementary Language Arts Assessment Specialist, and I'm over Acadience Reading. I'll let Jared introduce himself.
Hi, Jared Wright. I'm the Elementary Math and Science Assessment Specialist, and I work with Acadience Math.
And because we are recording this session, I have just put in a link on here to our participants notebook that you can find under my Padlet. And then Jared, if you would just drop in the chat for participants that are here, the link to the participants notebook. So please make a copy of this participants notebook. And that's where you're going to be recording your data today and doing some reflection and some planning. So our learning intention is that you are learning about progress monitoring and pathways of progress, and that you will understand how setting pathways of progress is necessary. You'll be able to communicate the importance of progress monitoring to your staff, and you'll be able to create a plan to ensure goals are set and progress monitoring is being done and evaluated. So pathways of progress, it supports setting meaningful, ambitious, attainable goals for students. It allows you to evaluate student progress and rate of growth. It establishes those individual student progress monitoring goals, and also allows you to evaluate the effectiveness of support at the classroom, school, or district level. It is not intended for teacher accountability. So for math, the state growth goal is 60% of students in grades 1 through 3 achieve typical or better growth. There is not a goal around reading anymore because of some changes in the law and in board rule. Highly skilled learners are students who are solidly on track to learn those skills. And if they do not make typical growth, their growth is counted as being typical when it's calculated. These students will be indicated with a little asterisk next to their pathways of progress at the middle of the year. So if you're wondering if students qualify as a highly skilled learner, that information is available at the middle of the year, and then at the end of the year next to the pathways of progress information on ALO. So teachers should go in and make sure that they're looking at those goals. So the system does automatically set a goal. If a student is below or well below, that goal is set for above typical progress. If they are at or above benchmark, it's usually set to typical progress. Sometimes for some students who are at the highly skilled learner criteria level, that goals are set to be below typical progress because the system's saying this is what students would typically do in a year's worth of time. And sometimes it can be a little funky when you have those highly skilled learners. So the system does set those goals, but it's important for teachers to go in and actually look at that and say, yep, this is what I agree with. This is the area I'm working on the most with this student. So this is the area that I expect to see the most growth. And maybe I'm not going to see as much growth in retail because I'm really focused on accuracy for this student. The goal does allow you to monitor the student's progress towards that goal for any on-grade progress monitoring. Those pathways goals will not, or I mean, the pathway data won't appear until the middle of the year, but you can see that that little goal is there on the right side next to each student's name. So progress monitoring, just reminders about that you can do progress monitoring with grade level or below grade level material, and it should match that intervention being provided for the student. So that intervention plus that progress monitoring is really going to help you to reach that instructional goal for the child. For out of grade guidelines, just making sure that students are being progress monitored at the correct level based on their current skills. So you go down the left side of this chart to determine where you stop, and then you go up the right side to determine when you move up a level. For ALO, any off-grade progress monitoring has a graph that appears under the student's profile, which is different than M-Class. And it's also accelerated, so the expectation is that the student is going to finish that off-grade progress by the middle of the year. And so students will not, or the aim line, sorry, for students is greater for that off-grade progress monitoring, because we want them to not be spending an entire year at a specific level for that off-grade progress monitoring. So let me just answer a couple of questions in the chat. We will do a sign-in at the very end, and we did include a copy of this in your participants notebook, as well as a copy of the highly skilled learner criteria that you can reference later. And then please feel free to drop questions in the chat or come off mute and ask, because we are happy to answer your questions. That's part of why we are here today, is to make sure that you are getting things answered for yourself and making sure that you're able to access the data that you need to support your students and your teachers. So just that reminder about those frequency rate requirements: red students every 1 to 2 weeks, yellow every 2 to 4 weeks. So progress monitoring should have started because we are done with our benchmark window, and you should have every well below benchmark student progress monitored sometime either this week or next week. So by the time October 11th happens, every well below benchmark student should have been progress monitored at least one time. So just thinking about progress monitoring completion, having a plan in place to who will check that progress monitoring, how frequently will that progress monitoring data or the completion be reviewed, and if progress monitoring is not occurring, who's going to do something about that? What action is going to be taken? And then also making sure that your teachers are evaluating that progress monitoring data. So if those 3 consecutive data points are falling below the aim line, which is that red appearing on the PM status report, their students not likely to meet their goals, and we really need to intervene and do something different in order to be able to better support them. So progress monitoring only really has value when teachers are utilizing the data to inform their instruction in the classroom and to inform the intervention that the student is receiving. So the progress monitoring reports, when you look at that as an administrator, on that main dashboard page at the very bottom is a progress monitoring status bar. The colors do not mean benchmark levels. The colors mean likelihood of reaching goals. So gray is there's not enough data yet because there has to be at least 3 data points, or the students aren't being progress monitored at a rate like they should be. Red is those last 3 data points are below the aim line, not likely to meet their goal. Yellow, the last 3 data points above and below, so it's mixed. So you can't really determine if they are going to reach that goal or not. And then green is the last 3 data points are above the aim line, meaning they are likely to meet the goal. And in ADM, you can see this Acadience Learning Student Progress Monitoring Report. So, Nikki, the only way to see progress monitoring data before you have 3 data points is to download the CSV file and then choose progress monitoring. And then it's going to pull up all of the students who have been progress monitored with their data. So the little chips on the progress monitoring arrows do not show up until there's 3 data points for the students. So that is something that we are currently talking to ALO about, is adding better progress monitoring reports. So Tammy, you can download the CSV file if you are on the student list view, if you have school or LEA level access. And yes, they do count off-grade level data points towards those 3 data points. And they do have to be enrolled in progress monitoring for their data to be appearing on those reports.
So
So-
question,
so
if you
do a one-time.
if do a one-time assessment, it will, if you go to the one-time assessment and they weren't enrolled in progress monitoring, it won't show up on, I like to call it the Star Wars report.
Correct. Unless
This is a
you,
pain in our butt. I just want you to know how frustrating this is.
I totally empathize. We have been talking to ALO, in fact, before this even started, that people were not going to be happy about the progress monitoring reports because it's not providing enough data for the work that we're doing here in Utah. So please feel free to reach out to ALO and let them know that you would like better progress monitoring reports, because we have been saying this, but if you are reaching out, letting them know that as well, it may help them to change what they're doing. Couple of questions. You cannot see a classroom report of students selected for progress monitoring and the rate that has been selected. You would have to go into the individual student in order to be able to see that. And if you enroll them in a rate and then do it more frequently, it does not affect your progress monitoring fidelity report. So for example, a student was enrolled every 2 weeks, and then during a 2-week period, you do them twice, and then the next 2 weeks, you actually only do them once. That's totally fine. You will still be within that rate because you had selected to only do it every 2 weeks. Yes, I'm happy to show you where you download that file. So the one-time progress monitoring will show up on the progress monitoring download of the CSV file. It just won't show up on the little PM status icons or the progress monitoring status bar. That data only is pulled over if the student is enrolled in progress monitoring. But if you are looking for just that one-time assessment, that is available through the download. And then if you're progress monitoring every 4 weeks, I would probably just enroll them in progress monitoring and select the every 4 weeks so that they will appear on all of the other data profiles for progress monitoring. There is currently not reports for the whole school instead of just each grade level, which is also something that we are talking to ALO about adding on the main data dashboard page. Instead of selecting individual grades, having one that allows you to see all with the data for the entire school compiled versus individual grades. There is not a way to see previous year's data all on one page when looking at an individual student. It does pull up individual years once your historical data has been loaded into the system. And the one-time progress monitoring will show up on the student graphs for them. And yes, ALO does recommend progress monitoring in only one measure at a time, because you're probably only providing interventions for one individual measure or that align to one individual measure, and you really want to see that progress. If you enroll a student every 4 weeks and don't get them progress monitored, it will show them as being not at rate when you go into the system, and it will show them as being not progress monitored at rate when you go into the assess tab. So on the reports, they will be gray, and then in the assess tab, they will show that they progress monitoring is past due. You can enroll entire class at the same time. When you enroll them, it just has to be that you do the same measure for whoever you have selected. So whether that's in a specific group, or you can just go into a class and select students' names next to that, the little circles next to their names, and then enroll in progress monitoring. You don't have to create a group first. Let's see, trying to make sure I got everybody. Let me show you real fast where to download those files. Jared, do you want to drop Rosa's email in the chat for people to send information about? Let's see. Okay, so for downloading, you go into My District. You have to select, you can just go to Students here. If you're doing an entire district, or if you're looking at a specific school, you would choose the school. Over here, these 3 little dots. Make my screen a little bigger. These 3 little dots over here allows you to export the student data, and then you would just check progress monitoring scores. And then you can export if you're doing reading or math or combined. There is not a report that is like the progress monitoring fidelity report that was available in M-Class. So that really is what we've been talking to ALO about, is having something that's similar to that really allows people to go in and check that progress monitoring fidelity. And you cannot enroll multiple students from progress monitoring at the same time. It is a one student at a time process. And you have to go into the student's individual profile. And then under that main overview tab, you can select the 3 little dots and select progress monitoring. And then it allows you to unenroll and then enroll them in something different. Okay. So Jared just dropped in the chat, people that we work with at Acadience, that you are welcome to provide feedback or requests for specific reports. Please CC us on that so we can also follow up. Okay. So, looking at the time, I think we're going to go ahead and skip this. I would just like for you to think about how you can help teachers see, well, the importance of and utilize progress monitoring data to inform instruction. And we are going to go into a breakout room. We're just not going to take the full 10 minutes. So going to go ahead and put people in breakout rooms to discuss that progress monitoring within your school, as well as thinking about systems that need to be put in place in order for progress monitoring to be effective. So just having a discussion with other school leaders about how they're managing progress monitoring and utilizing that data to really form instruction. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and send everybody to a breakout room. Go ahead and just accept when it invites you to join a breakout room. Hey, looks like everybody is back. Hopefully found that valuable to just have some discussion time with some other school leaders. After MOI, I am not. So when you download the benchmark data for your school, pathways will be included on that CSV file at middle of year and end of year. So now I want to give you some time to really think about pathways of progress and progress monitoring, and really think about planning for your specific school or LEA. So we have 10 minutes for you to complete the sections for pathways and progress monitoring in the action planning form. So pages 9 and 10 in your participant notebook, to really be thinking about how you're going to utilize that pathways of progress and utilize that progress monitoring data to really inform instruction and help students make progress. And if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute as we go into some independent work time.
Hey, Teresa, can I just ask you a follow-up question from before about
Yes.
those green and blue students that were progress monitoring, not necessarily every 4 weeks? I've heard some other people in my district say that when they've enrolled the students in a specific time frame and progress monitoring doesn't get done within that time frame, that ALO actually drops them out of enrollment. Is that the case, or does it just show up as they're late being progress monitored?
It should not drop them. I will have to verify that, but my understanding is that they just show up as being not at rate, and then also they appear as gray within all of your status and data.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
But I will double check that.
Okay, if you need anything, just stop me. Hi, Chaselyn, how are you?
Good.
Question. Mrs. Bryson here, I just wanted a hug.
You know what? She doesn't work on Fridays. Sorry,
Oh.
girlfriend. But there's other ladies over there that might be willing to give you a hug. Okay. You need a hug, you gotta have a hug.
Macy, if you do not have 3 dots on your view, then that means that you haven't been given that permission level. So it's only for people who have overall school or LEA permission level. So you'll need to talk to whoever manages ALO for your district or LEA or charter, and then ask them to change your permission if you should have access to that download data. So teachers do not have access to the CSV files.
Sorry, I'm sent it too quick, Macy. You would need school or LEA level access.
Hello, how are you? I'm good. Sorry, I don't want to keep out. Good.
Hey, I'm trying to figure out what the difference between the pathway goal is and the goal that is set there now. What is the difference?
It's the same. So the goal that is set there now is their pathways of progress goal. And when you go in and look at the individual student graphs, it's going to create that aim line for any grade level graphs.
So it's
So,
gonna put another aim line on there is what it's.
so it's gonna put that,
MOI.
um, it has an aim line right now, but it's going to create, so at the middle of the year, you will get also the pathways data, which is the actual pathway of the student. The goal is what the student is trying to achieve, and provides that aim line for your progress monitoring data. So when it's on grade progress monitoring, if the student is below that aim line, that progress monitoring or the goal line,
Mhm.
their data appears red. If it's above that aim line, their data appears green. If it's mixed, their data appears yellow. So that aim line is what that progress monitoring data is being compared to determine if the student is going to reach that goal or not.
And also there's this little thing you can click on that says intervention line.
Yes.
What is
So
that?
if you click on that intervention line, it's going to add a vertical line on every graph. And that's where if you change interventions for that student, that you can record this and be like, hey, yep, they were red before this. We're going to add an intervention line. We're going to change something. And then we're going to look and see after this line, has the data improved? Is the student now making the progress we need them to make? Super great for any student, but especially for any students that you're tracking for special to see if they're going to qualify for special education, because you really need to make sure you're tracking those interventions. But for any time you make an intervention change, add that line, and then you can kind of ignore the data before that and really look at the data after to see if now they're making the progress we need them to make. Is now are they moving towards yellow and green being their data points at, close to and then above the aim line.
Okay, so let me clarify. The goal line and the pathway are the same thing. But what does that, but I just don't
So
understand what that
they-
means after MOI.
So they're currently, the goal line is saying, this is where we want the student to go. This is the growth we want them to make. The
Oh,
pathways is the actual growth that the student makes. And we want
But-
those to be the same, but they may or may not be the same.
so so after MOI, that line could look different.
The goal line would still be the same, but the actual pathway that the student made may be different.
So let me say, usually what I do is I take a pathway and I break it down month by month so that I know how many more words per month they have to improve.
Mm-hmm.
But that's based off of their pathway. Can I still do this with this goal line?
So the goal line would work the same way. So if you wanted students to reach a certain, say they started at 28 words and you want them to be at 67 words by the end of the year. And that goal is an above typical growth goal for the student to really push them to close that achievement gap. You could still break that up across the months and really be thinking about how much they need to be growing every single month. But also that aim line, if you look at the progress monitoring data for those students, as long as those progress monitoring probe data is appearing above the aim line, then they're going to reach that end of the year goal.
Oh, okay.
And you don't even have to calculate anything. The progress monitoring is going to calculate it in comparison to the aim line.
Okay. Whereas when we had M-Class, it didn't show the progress monitoring on their pathway graph.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So the student pathway toggle will be locked until the middle of the year when we actually know and have some pathways data for the student. So you won't be able to toggle that on for the individual student graphs until the middle of the year. So Cheryl Henry, when a SPED teacher is doing an out of grade level, classroom teachers should not be doing on grade level because they're not going to get great data. It's going to be frustrating for the student. They're not going to be making much progress. So that's out of grade level progress monitoring is all that is needed. Parent link to the parent letter. So I just dropped that in there. I will be adding in today a Spanish translation of those parent letters for Acadience reading. So those will be added into the folder that you are welcome to utilize for any of your parents where Spanish is their primary language.
So I went to another training and they told me that progress monitoring for math is not required.
That is correct. Progress monitoring for reading is required in grades K through 3, but not for math.
Even in the early numeracy.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So Tammy, if you go to, we'll pull up this one more time. If you go to the student list view, so you do need to be on the student list view, then you should be able to have access to this export student data. It's the 3 little dots over here on the side. So you can do it from a district level, or also if you go into a specific school, selects the student list, then you should be able to access it from the school level as well. And then Kate, I will put you guys in the same breakout room. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Actually, we're gonna take a 10-minute break in a little bit. We'll start looking at some data and we'll come back and take a 10-minute break. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jared. So I'm gonna stop sharing and let you share, Jared.
All right, I'll get my thing set up, but you put me in a bad place. They could have had a break and now I've got to overcome that.
Well, we've only been at it for a little bit, so I figured we'd take the break at 10:30.
Good. Let me working on getting. Sure. Sorry, it's just taking me a second to set it up. Once I start sharing, it makes it weird. And I'm glad to see a lot of Box Elder people here. That's nice. At least in name. All right. So we'll get started. We'll go through and look at the composite data now. So Teresa's talked about progress monitoring and pathways of progress. And so we're going to jump into the composite scores, and you can see here our intention. Just looking at composite scores from a higher level, this school level is where we're going to focus, and then kind of think about action steps that we might take as we look at that data. What's that telling us about the classroom instruction? and whether things need to maybe be addressed during the actual whole class instruction, rather, and lessen the number of different small groups that might need to take place. So let's go through this. So to start off, oh, we don't have it listed there. So we want to show this. So this is data taken from the national, I don't know, whatever they have, Acadience has for the national data related to Acadience reading. But wanted to point out that on the left side, the students were at benchmark in kindergarten at the end of the year. So you can see that green bar. And then on the right side is students that were above benchmark in kindergarten at the end of the year. And then the data follows them from from that end of year kindergarten up to the end of year in third grade. And you can see as far as how the data is distributed. If students are at benchmark, there's a lot more variety between the 4 different performance levels. Whereas if students are above benchmark, there's a less variety. Most of the students remain at above benchmark. And so sharing this, that, yeah, there are times where we're happy that students are at benchmark. We're pushing for that. We're trying to get them to get there, and we're happy for that. But if there are students that are at benchmark, it would be helpful for them in the future if we can push them to move towards that above benchmark, and not just say, oh yeah, we're good, we don't need to worry about it. Just seeing how that plays out in future grades. As far as the reports we're going to be looking at, so we still have ADM on here because there are some school districts that use ADM for Acadience math. The majority are using ALO, so you can see both of the reports there. Also, as far as reference, if you've used ADM in the past, you can reference and connect with what it might look like now. So we're going to look at the ALO, the class view, or really the student list view. And we also have a different view of the same data. So there's the rainbow looking view. And let me just show the 2 differences. So we have ALO, it's a benchmark overview. And we have a dashboard view, and then ADM has the kind of the pie charts at the, you can see what that looks like. But let me jump into this demo class. Excuse me. So initially it brings up all at in the top middle, and I've just selected beginning of year so that I of students. I'm at a student list. This is a district level. I could go over and select a school. Now I'm in a school level and then a class level, but let me just go. I use this at the top left. I use this breadcrumb trail thing to be able to find it. That, for me, that's easier just to use that. So I'm in my student list, beginning of the year. Since it's a demo, I need to select my grade. There we go. And so here's my student list. I have the details here. As Teresa was talking about progress monitoring, out to the side of the name is PM if they're enrolled in progress monitoring. I can see my composite score and then the different measure level data. So the way ALO works is not like a visible print button. Anything that shows on the screen you can print by however you want to print, whether you do Control P or maybe you right click and find print, and then you can print and then it prints the pages there. It creates a PDF and prints those. So if you're wondering, okay, how do I print this report? Because I want a hard copy of it. You would just go to however you're going to print. There's multiple ways to do that. And you can save it as a PDF, or you could print it on a printer, however you want to do that.
Hey, Jared.
Yes.
I noticed that when I tried to print it, the progress monitoring circle left. Is there any way that we can,
Oh,
how do we?
that's
make
weird.
that?
Yeah, I see that that's gone. I will, Teresa, do you know about that? Because I would imagine that would stay there. So that's something I would need to check on.
Yeah, that's not something I've looked at other than that may not be pulling that information over into the print report. But that's definitely something we can ask.
Yeah, because I was told it just prints that page, so that should be there. We'll find out. Thank you for bringing that up. So you do have this student view, and you have ways that you can sort you have the titles of the measures or the composite score. On the left side, you can sort up or down. And then you can go back to how it was. It defaults to just sorting it by the student name. On the right side of the little title acronym is where you can filter if you need to filter. So going back, we have this, oops, one more. So we have this class view, and that's what we're looking at now. To go to the benchmark overview or the dashboard view, on the right side, as you go over from the student list title, there will be a green V looking thing. That's to let you know there's a drop down there. If you click on that, then you can change to different views of data. There are the icons that go with it. At a school and district level, you're going to have these 5 options. At a class level, they have less options. They don't have some of these to look at. So if I want to see the benchmark overview, I click on benchmark overview, and now I'm still looking at that student list, but now it's just displaying in a different way. I have my reading composite score at the top. That's what's here. And I'm seeing, or you're seeing, the 3 levels just because I'm using demo data. You would just, for this year, you would see beginning of year, these rainbow data. You wouldn't see the others at this point. But as I hover over those, it gives me a number of students within that group. So I can see there's 125 students in well below, which is 33% of my overall group of 375. And then I can just hover over each one. There's also kind of this, it's a blended, if I want to see both red and yellow at the same time, then I can go on to that blended one, and it's going to show me the number of students in both of those categories. And the same goes for the green and blue. I can do that as well. And then as I scroll down, I see that data, but I see it specific to the different measures broken out that way. So it's just a different way to view the data. Now, if this is something I wanted to print out, again, however I want to print it. So I tend to right click and then I push print. And because obviously when you print something, it's not going to have that interactive nature of being able to hover over it and see any data. So what they've done is they keep and sorry, it's really, well, maybe. So they keep the rainbow looking thing with the number of students, but what they've done is then pull out the percentage and the end size that is in each of those categories. So if this is something I want to print out or create a PDF of, it pulls out the data that I'm seeing as I'm hovering over it. And looks like Teresa, you're responding to chats.
Yes.
You've got it all. Okay. So are there any questions about getting and looking at benchmark overview? If I wanted to go back, I would just click that green V shape on the right side, and I could go back to my student list. It defaults to all, so I would the beginning of year, and now I can see my student list.
Jared, can I ask you a question about
Yes,
back
please.
on that benchmark overview?
Yeah.
If I click on the red yellow at the bottom there, so it shows me, it brings up the list of the kids, which is really helpful, but how do I print that list, or how do I get that list to a printable page? Does that make sense? Because I can scroll through and see them.
Yeah. Is there something at the bottom that, because if I click on it, it should, sometimes it will filter to just that group of students. Is there something that says see more details, or you can click on that list? Here, let me go.
Not on mine, but it may be user error.
Let me select a school. So if I go to the school, so it looks like, for me, at least on this demo site, if I'm at a district level, I don't see the list of students. If I'm at a school level, I see the list. Is this what you're saying? You have this, you can scroll.
Yes, and it's really lovely to have it right there, but I can't capture that information, right?
The list,
Right.
oh, no, you can't print it. You can't,
So,
when you go
so,
to print, it doesn't print.
so what I would do is, if you're in the student list, let me go to, I hate how it goes back to all every time. All right, so if you're in the student list and you wanted to see those students, remember, this is the same data that's showing up in those rainbow visualizations. What I would do is I would come up to, if I'm looking at the composite score on this right side of the little title, it's super small, I would click filter, and now I can select well below and below. And so now what I'm seeing are students that are below or well below that list of students that I was hovering over on the rainbow. I'm now this is showing me what that list right here.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, so I would just use the filters for what you're looking at. And you can do that for each measure if you wanted to filter certain students.
But from a district level, how do you see, because I saw that Teresa, there was a question that said, can we see the benchmark? Can we view the rainbow graphs for all the teachers in a particular grade in a school at the same time and print them? And you said yes, but how does that happen?
So if you go, I think it's benchmark status, correct?
Yes.
So in over on that drop down, you'd select benchmark status. And when you click on that benchmark status, now I'm going to select all instead of a certain grade. I would select all. And then it has the title, it has the grade level and the school.
Okay, thank you.
And then, yeah, and then you could just print it as we've, using that print button, it'll come up with the data and out to the side. Okay. Any other questions?
Jared, I typed this in the chat, but can I go ahead and ask it verbally? For
Yeah.
the last one, for Becky's question about the, how do you print it and filter? Is there a way to filter based on two different points of data? For example, you know how the rainbow show, they were at red, now they're yellow type of thing by middle of year? Is there a way to look up so that because I can filter by just middle of year as red or well below or whatever. But how do I do who was well below and now yellow, or was green and now yellow? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm thinking back because we used ADM last year for a lot, and you would have the cohort, you're looking at, okay, those that scored below at the beginning of the year, where are they at the middle of the year? Is that right? Yeah. Teresa, it looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, will you just go over to the main dashboard? You will not see this information. Select a different grade because you will not see this information until the middle of year, but on your dashboard at the middle of year, this effectiveness of instructional support graph will appear. And this will have your data of where your well below benchmark students were at the beginning of the year and where they are now at the middle of the year, below, at, and above. And you can also see this information with pathways as well. So it's going to show you those students who started the year well below benchmark, what pathways did they make from the beginning to the middle, or middle to end, or beginning to end of year.
And I can print those, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we need. Thank
Yeah.
you.
The report just doesn't appear until you have middle of year data. So if you're looking for it, you won't, it like doesn't even exist yet.
Got it.
Right. And up here, you would be able to select beginning of year, middle of year, whichever time you're looking at. So you can select that. It won't let me here, but yeah. So it's on your main dashboard when you come on. Okay, thank you. Great questions. Anything else? I'm going to keep moving through then. All right, so in your participant notebook, so if I scroll on, this is the participant notebook, and maybe I skipped it. No, this is just outlined differently than the other. All right, so on pages 6, page 6, we have a chart for if you're looking at ELA or ELA, if you're looking at reading, and then page 7 is if you're looking at math. So as you're looking at the data, whichever one you want to use or both. So page 6 and 7 is what we're going to look at. But as you're looking at the data, so we've looked at that benchmark overview with the rainbow, and if you go to print, you'll see it similar to the screenshot here, where you have the number of students and then you have the percentages in each of the categories. And what we'd like you to do is just looking at that composite score, really thinking, well, pulling out students that are at or above and putting that percentage in, because we're thinking about our students, are the majority of students at or above, or are the majority of students below or well below? And if they're well below or below, then we're going to start thinking, okay, rather than having a whole bunch of little small groups, let's just address this and support students within the tier 1 instruction. So that's really the question we're looking at here, is how is tier 1 instruction doing to support these students? So just pulling those off, and then you just adding up the percentages. So looking at 42 and 16, so I have 58% in first grade of students who are at or above benchmark at the beginning of the year. Oops, look, went a little quick there. So we're going to use that chart within the participant notebook, either page 6 or page 7. And then using the data in the Let me go back to my student view. So I can, oh, takes a lot of clicks if you haven't noticed. So I can either pull the data just looking at the student list, or it's quite a bit easier if I select that drop down, go to benchmark overview, and now I can see my composite score in the top row and just hover over it there, or do the print feature to see that information. And then I can select the different grade levels. So we're going to,
Jared,
go
I
ahead.
think you can select all on this page and it will show you every grade level on the page at the same time. Yeah.
There you go. So go, yeah, there you go. It shows all the grades. And then also the composite score and the measures.
Hi, sorry, can you show me how to get to that page again, please?
The benchmark overview.
Yes.
Yeah. So, right, let's see. Depends where you're at. So what screen are you on? Do you have a student list?
Well, I hit the A in the corner, so I'm at benchmark
Yeah.
assessments where I can
Right
select
here.
K through 6.
Okay. So what I tend to do is there's this my district.
Mm-hmm.
I click on that. And then I can either just go from a district level and I see school. Do you see school staff and students?
Yes, and apps.
Okay. So you can either go to a specific school if you want to dig it at the school level.
Mhm.
And then out to the side, you can just click on students. And when you click on students, it brings up the student list. Are you seeing the student list?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Then if you go to the right of student list, there's a green, look like a
Oh,
carrot,
right.
or
Yeah.
click on that, and then you'll have the option to select benchmark overview.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It is a little tricky. There's sometimes it doesn't feel like there's obvious things. So it's you almost get to pretend you're a student, click on a whole bunch of buttons and see what happens. Okay. All right. So we're gonna give you some time to analyze the composite score, looking at the different grades and really thinking about the question, do we need to adjust tier 1 instruction? What does it look like overall for those students in those classes? So you have at and above, and then below and well below. The other thing too, that as you think about this, do we need to modify that tier 1 instruction, but are there things that we can celebrate as well? Are there great things that are happening that we want to bring attention to, and either maybe find out more, like what's going on in this grade? They seem to be really nailing it, and seeing the successes that are happening as well. So we're going to give you 20 minutes to dig in there, and Teresa and I are here to answer any questions or support you as you're looking at your data. And let's see, yes, okay.
I'm just curious, I'm looking at like my first grade who is 56% yellow. We don't have any reds, but yellow in nonsense word fluency. That's like over half the grade. And that's definitely a tier 1 problem. But what happens next? Where do we get information of the ways to solve some tier 1 problems? Like, do you have some good sources to send us to? Like I suggested taking the phonics time to do some walk-tos for ability grouping, and that went over like terribly.
So, your teacher should have gone through letters, which has some great strategies for helping students gain phonics skills. So I would definitely check phonemic awareness as well for those students to ensure that their phonemic awareness skills are good, and then really focus in on the phonics decoding of those individual phonemes. And I would recommend reaching out. I'm going to drop her email in the chat. Christine Elegante at the state. She is on the teaching and learning side and works with early literacy, and can provide you with some additional ideas or things that you could have your teachers do. Really, because you have so many students at that level, you're going to want to work on it in tier 1, as well as providing some interventions specifically for those students, depending on what their specific needs are. But you probably want to do a core phonics screener to just see like what specific sounds the students.
We did that.
Great. So you having that data, I would do some grouping, and yeah, it's hard, but it's the only way for them to learn those things, because if they can't do those nonsense words, they are definitely not going to be able to read connected text.
Yep. And then, but I guess the problem is we also got a new program for our whole A language arts. And so they don't want to fill in holes during phonics time because they want to have fidelity of the new program during tier 1 time.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense. I totally understand that. Do you have an intervention time set up that where you could fill in those holes?
Yes, we are doing that too. But those groups are huge.
Yes, because there's so many students, right?
Yes.
I would recommend definitely reach out to Christine, and then I would take a look at like, are there specific sounds that like the majority of students don't have? And when you're getting to those within your phonics program, knowing that you're going to need to spend additional time, right? Or maybe you can take 3 or 4 minutes of that phonics time and start working on some of those additional sounds that students don't have to help fill in those gaps for them, right? Like not completely just say we're throwing it away and not using the phonics within that program, but just taking, 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes every day to work on specific sounds that students are lacking to help fill in those gaps faster.
In other words, differentiate in your tier 1. So sorry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Lori, that is what we're assuming, is that tier 2 is yellow where they're going to need some additional support, and tier 3 is those reds where they need lots of support to close that achievement gap.
Can I ask a question about the think about question?
Mhm.
So what grades need to modify their tier 1 instruction? Isn't it kind of hard for us to analyze the effectiveness of tier 1 with just a beginning of year data point? Or are
So
there some that
it
I'm
would
missing?
not necessarily be looking at the effectiveness, because yes, you would not be able to see that, but looking at like, if the majority of my students at our red and yellow level, they're going to really struggle to access grade level materials. And so I'm going to have to think about how can I provide some additional scaffolding within my classroom. So if this is in second grade, I'm not going to have a lot of students who are going to be able to read that text. So we might have to do more core reading or do some partner reading. And thinking about, I might need to spend some additional time on phonics instruction to help close that achievement gap for students. So it's really looking at overall, where is my class at, to be able to scaffold for students, or if you have students that are really high, push them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes.
Teresa, do you want to talk about that transfer?
The
data?
rostering question.
Yeah.
So I know that, was it yesterday? So part of the issue can be is that if students aren't dropped from their previous school, they will not roster to you. They will keep rostering to their other school. So schools aren't always super fast about going into the data gateway and unenrolling them. And sometimes they'll go in and unenroll them and backdated a whole bunch. But they will not roster to you as long as they are still enrolled in a different school. So that would be the first step. If you don't see students appearing, make sure they've actually been unenrolled from their previous school. Because the system really, once they're in your SIS system without any errors, they should roster overnight. I know that there was some issues with Utrecht's not loading information. And there's currently some issue that's going on that some schools or some LEAs are not rostering their students right now. Doesn't look like it's everybody, but it is some. So their BOI data currently is not transferring with students. That is something we are working with ALO on to get added to the system. You do have to go into the data gateway to unenroll the student from your LEA. You can't just drop them in your SIS system. You have to go in and do it on the data gateway in order for them to roster to a different place. So if you do have students not rostering, check, make sure they got unenrolled from their prior school. Check and make sure there are no errors in their file that is going through to Utrecht's. Because if there's any data missing, then it won't get into Utrecht's and they will not roster into ALO. So those are the two main reasons why students won't roster.
So I have a question. We had a couple of students that were on a 2-week vacation. So we did not get them benchmarked. So do we just start them with progress monitoring? Okay.
If they're moving from out of state, it may be that their SSID number is still, because it has to be created. So make sure that they've had a state SSID number created for them. I will drop Maureen's email in the chat. So she is the rostering guru and has access to more information than I do to see why students might not be rostering like you would expect them to. So please feel free to reach out to her and email her with any issues that you're having with rostering. And please just include the student's SSID number, and then she can look into anything else that's going on.
Jody, as far as your question, just from a math perspective, in order to know what to progress or what instruction to support students with so that you can progress monitor to see whether that instruction's having any effect, it would be important to do some sort of benchmark. So whether it's the official benchmark or whether you get a progress monitoring form and administer that to a student so that you know where you're going to support that student in the upcoming instruction and progress monitoring, it would be to do that.
Doesn't this ALO, when you go past the benchmark window, doesn't, you can pull up a student and automatically PMs will show up when you go to assess them? It doesn't go to the benchmark passages or test? I think that's what I've been seeing.
Yes, so once the benchmark window closes, it will automatically pull the student up, or it automatically, when you would click that assess tab, goes to progress monitoring instead of benchmark.
But then does that give them a code, a color, or does that just leave them blank? I haven't had to do one yet.
It will not provide a benchmark score with like an overall composite.
Okay.
Are we taking a break soon?
I'm on mute. We have about 3.5 minutes. If you're need that time, or if you're done and you've looked at the data, feel free. We could jump into a break, and let's plan on coming back at 11:05. So you can finish up your looking at the data, and then we'll meet back at 11:05. Jesse, that's up to you. All the functionality is very similar between reading and math. So we're just sharing general functionality and reports to look at. And then you can decide if you want to focus on reading or math, or kind of do both. Or focus on one now and then go back and look at the other later. So that would be just up to you and how you want to, which data you want to pay attention to for today. All right, it's 11:05. As people are coming back from the break, we'll get started. Excuse me. In your participant notebook on page 8, we have these 3 questions. Actually, there's 4 there with the Y, but we have those questions. Composite score analysis reflection that you can add to your participant notebook. And then we also have this action planning below. So first, though, we're going to take a few minutes and think about reflecting on, we've gone through the composite score, but you could also reflect on, because there were many questions around progress monitoring and pathways of progress. What are your priorities based on the data that you're looking at? What are some action steps, specifically the initial action steps? What are you going to do once we end this Zoom call or a Zoom meeting? What are you going to go do, and why would that be your initial action steps? And then what do you anticipate to be that the biggest challenge to accomplishing those steps? And we'll give you 10 minutes to go through this, or I know there are some of you in the same location talking through this. And then what we'll do is taking all of this information, we're going to go into breakout rooms after the 10 minutes so that you have a chance to bounce your ideas off of someone else and get their feedback and also share your feedback to them. So before I start our timer, are there any questions on the task of just reflecting on the data and your action steps? All right, I'll start the timer. As we've done so far, Teresa and I are happy to answer any questions as you're reflecting on the data and what you're going to do about it. Okay. All right. Hopefully you've had some time then to be able to reflect and think through the data and what it looks like for the school or the district, whichever data you're looking at. Excuse me. So now we're going to open up breakout rooms and use what you've written down, your thoughts there, to be able to share with someone else to get their feedback, and maybe that will help prompt some additional thoughts and things you might want to add, as well as sharing your thoughts and feedback with others. So let's see.
I'll open up the rooms, Jared.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go for about 10 minutes as you're sharing feedback. If you're in a room with a group of people, it may be helpful to hear someone outside of your own school or district, but I'll leave that decision up to you. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully that was a good use of the 10 minutes to be able to talk through with someone else your thoughts and plans. Kind of going back to the initial start of today, and that is this question that I'm showing. But how can you use the data to identify strengths and weaknesses in your school, and then to improve student outcomes? So that's really the idea with BOI, and hopefully as we went through today, looking at pathways of progress, progress monitoring, the composite score, those things at a school level can be helpful. Obviously, as you get into the class level, the actual measures are going to be more helpful to dig into the data. All right, let's look at then in the participant notebook on pages 9 and 10 is just a place for you to consider action planning and thinking about the data that you've looked at and thinking about, okay, what are the next steps at a school level, and then maybe specific grades. And then also thinking about, I know there's goals that schools, districts, classes have already. So what's that alignment look like in supporting students? So we have a place for you to enter information there if you would like to use that as we go through it. But I'm going to jump to questions. Any questions as we've gone through today? I know you've asked a lot of questions as we've gone through it, so that's great. If you do have questions and they come up as you're thinking through and looking at the data, just as a reminder, our emails are right here, Teresa and myself. And Teresa, do you happen to have the survey link handy?
Yep.
Teresa. Okay, thank you. Teresa will put the survey link in the chat so that you can complete that. And as was mentioned at the beginning, the slides, a link to the slides is in the participant notebook. And Teresa has put the link into the chat. Make sure you fill that out if you'd like credit. We also appreciate any feedback that you have about today, anything we can improve on, or things that you saw as good that we want to continue with. So if you'll take your time to fill that out, that would be much appreciated. And we will stay on the line. We had this scheduled till 12, so if you want to take time now to look through the action planning and to consider your next steps, that's great. Teresa and I will be here to support you as you're doing that. And also appreciate your attendance. So Teresa, is there anything
It doesn't look like there is a link to the slides, so I am dropping a link to the slides in the chat as well for those of you who are asking for it.
Okay, great.
Hey, we just had a quick question about progress monitoring. About if you guys know of a way, or if we've missed it or something, you can unenroll a whole group of kids in progress monitoring by selecting multiple kiddos. Can you unenroll them the same way, or do you have to go in and unenroll them one by one?
I think you have to unenroll them one by one. I haven't seen where you can group unenroll students. But that would be a helpful feature.
Yes, it would be. So we can put that on our list. Thanks.
We really didn't talk about the grouping tool that's in there.
Yeah, if you would like some, Jared can pull that up and demonstrate how to utilize that grouping tool. Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be great to just show that for a minute.
Yeah, definitely. So let me make sure I'm still logged in. Sometime, oh, there it goes. It logs me out. Let me log in and then I will show you. All right. So I'm getting to a student list. So in my student list, if depending on how you want to do this, if you're looking at the data, but you're maybe you want to focus on students who are below or well below in certain measures, you can filter those students. You can also look at their initial grouping tool that they have, this 4-square icon, which create, wow, this is a whole school, so it's gonna have a big list. If I was doing this initial grouping tool, I would want to use that at a class level. And that kind of gives you the initial idea, but, oh, sorry, my thing's going slow and then I click it. There we go. All right, so the way I do it is I select the students I would like to enroll, whether that's filtering, maybe I'm filtering for well below in a certain category. Then it brings up all the students. I can, there's a button on the left at the top. I could select all of the students, or I can select certain students. Here, let's go to a class. That might be more. So when I'm in a class level, I click on my student list and then I can select the different students that I want to put into a group. When I start to click the buttons on the left side, from the top, a menu will drop down. One of the options is to create a group. And so I click on, so if I click create group now, it's going to have these 4 students. So I click create group, I can name it. One thing Teresa and I talk about is making sure if you're creating groups, make sure you have some sort of guide of how you want people to create groups so that it's clear on which group that is, what it's titled, whether it has the grade in it, the teacher's name, but however you're wanting to group those students. And then you would click next, and now I can review which students are there. If I think, no, I don't want them in the group, I can remove them before I put them in the group. I can also go back and select additional students if I would like to add other students in this group while I'm in this screen. If I think, oh yeah, these guys, this is what I want, who I want in the group, I can assign a staff member to that group or staff members, and then I would create the group. And then once I've created that group, whenever I'm looking at the data, when it asks me about classes, so let's go back here, it has classes and groups. Right now it's classes, but if I clicked on groups, then in this list of groups, my group would now be there. And whoever has access to that group would be able to see the data. Whether that's a school level or if I've put that teacher in charge of that group, that they would be able to access that group rather than looking at each individual kid. Or maybe I created a group with different classes rather than having to go to all the different classes to find the students. They could just look at that group and then pull up the data for that group of students.
I also think, though, that you have to have certain permissions to let others to have staff in a group, because when my teachers they couldn't add staff.
No, they will not be able to. When teachers are creating groups, they can only create the groups for themselves. If you want groups created that other staff are being added to, then that has to be created at the admin level. And no, ALO does not have any intervention ideas, or it also does not include ideas for parents of things they can do with their children on their parent letters either. So
When you're doing, oh, sorry, go ahead, Teresa.
the intervention needs to come from your intervention program for the student.
This was just a follow-up to what you were just talking about with groups. Can at the admin level, can you assign a group with students in different classes within a certain grade level and then assign all 3 teachers as the staff in that group?
Yes,
So
you
if it
can.
is an intervention group, all of the teachers can see it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
You could also make groups with multiple grade levels in them.
Yeah, the grouping function at the admin level is pretty helpful in the fact that you can really create groups with anybody that you have access to.
And that's why I was wondering if maybe I should make a progress monitoring group just so I can check on them that way.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
How do you set a progress monitoring group to assess them? I mean, to check on the teachers.
You would do it the same way. You would create the group of students that you are wanting to look at that progress monitoring, and then you can go to that progress monitoring status page and see the detail for that group. So when Jared showed you, you can choose either classes or groups. If you choose groups, you can select that group of students. And then in the little drop-down menu where we were looking at benchmark status and benchmark overview, Jared's going to show you real fast. So you can select a group. And then over on the drop-down, you can choose PM status. And it's going to show you the progress monitoring data just for that group of students that you selected.
Mm.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Teresa, could you say again, sorry, what are the 3 criteria for having students show up in color on that progress monitoring? In order
So they
for
have to be enrolled in progress monitoring, and there has to be at least 3 data points. And once there are 3 data points, they will appear on that PM status with color in their little, I don't know. Somebody called them a Star Wars sign. Yeah, their little triangle.
Perfect. So 3 data points would be beginning of year and 2 progress monitors?
I think so. It might be 3 progress monitoring. Trying to remember if it appears with just 2 progress monitoring data points or if it requires the 3. I'm not positive. It might be 3 progress monitoring points.
Thank you.
Yeah, ALO does not specify whether the benchmark counts as a point or not. So I'm not positive.
I just looked at some data from our school with the progress monitoring status, and there is a student that has 2 progress monitoring and a benchmark, but the triangle is not colored. There's another student that has the benchmark and 3 progress monitoring, and the triangle is colored.
Okay, so it is the 3 progress monitoring. Thank you. I was like, I could try and look, but I don't know who has 3 progress monitoring prompts yet. So it would have kind of just been a random search for that. So thank you. I appreciate that. end the meeting today?